Good morning, and you know what? Welcome to Rising. I wonder how many times I've said that now over the last 5 years.
I noticed that you don't keep it too boring, though. You like to be like,
trying to mix it up every day.
It's a great day today, or like you'll do a little fancy thing at least once a week.
Try to Google new adjectives.
So what do you?
New superlatives.
I was gonna say, what are you gonna do tomorrow?
Stupendous today.
But it's Friday, and you won't see you tomorrow.
I won't be here. Yeah.
Well,
do you read it?
I read
Fridays?
it on Friday. So what should I do tomorrow? So everybody can look forward to it.
I'm not gonna let you steal my material. Do you have any big weekend plans?
I'm actually going to Colorado. Kinsley missed her friends.
Oh, how
and
nice.
I didn't know 4-year-olds really cared that much. I mean, I guess I maybe shouldn't know, but she actually wanted to see and named the friend she wanted to see. So we're going to oblige her.
Yeah, she's a little too young to really miss friends after you do a big move, probably. Because that can be traumatic for kids that are slightly older than that.
Well, hopefully D.C. is my forever home.
Yeah.
And then we'll
make new
have
friends.
to move again. Yep. Coming up on Rising, protests are erupting after a federal officer shot a man in the leg in Minneapolis last night, just a week after an ICE agent shot and killed Renee Good.
Plus, the FBI raided a Washington Post reporter's home as part of a leak investigation into a Pentagon contractor.
And the White House is facing criticism after Fed Chair Jerome Powell announced he was getting investigated. I'll have more on that in my lens. First, Robby, what's on your radar today?
Laura Loomer. The Trump-loving social media personality is constantly waging war against various figures on the right who disagree with interventionist foreign policy and endless appetite for starting new wars in the Middle East. She's attacked Tucker Carlson, Marjorie Taylor Greene, and others. And now she's going after Thomas Massie. On X the other day, she posted a video of her reporter confronting Massie in the halls of Congress, and she apparently thought it made Massie look bad. Well, most people seem to disagree with that. Let's watch the encounter.
How's it going?
Happy birthday.
Thank you.
Wait, so Congressman, in the last 2 weeks, you repeated AOC's talking points on Venezuela, and Jasmine Crockett has retweeted you. When will you change your party affiliation to Democrat?
I thought you knew. I vote with Republicans 91% of the time.
And
the 9% I don't, they're taken up for pedophiles, starting another war, or bankrupting our country.
I don't know about that, Congressman. We'll see.
Are we going to impeach Pat Monty for not releasing?
Based. Massie set that guy straight. Yeah, he doesn't vote with Republicans all the time. When Republicans are voting to raise your taxes, spend even more money, or get involved in foreign entanglements, or want to protect Jeffrey Epstein's rich friends, then yeah, Massie doesn't vote with them. It does not make him a Democrat. It makes him someone who thinks for himself. Wouldn't it be nice if more members of Congress were like that? Laura Loomer doesn't want people who think for themselves. She wants a Republican Party that votes in lockstep with Trump. Honestly, that's not even quite right. She wants a Republican Party that votes in lockstep with her vision of Trumpism, a hawkish, interventionist version of Trumpism, one that most people who came aboard the Trump train this time around actually do not want. In fact, if Trump spent a little less time listening to Laura Loomer, a little more time listening to Thomas Massie, the Republican Party would be in better shape. Stop voting for bankruptcy, stop voting to cover for Epstein, and stop getting the U.S. involved overseas. Oh, and maybe, just maybe, could we try to investigate Dr. Fauci? Throw that out there. After all, Trump has directed the DOJ to look at Jerome Powell, John Bolton, James Comey, Letitia James, and other perceived enemies, but when it comes to Fauci, there's no action. That's according to Rand Paul, who has all but handed the DOJ the evidence they need on a silver platter. Here he was telling Joe Rogan all about that.
And I've summarized it again in a criminal referral to Trump's attorney general, and I still haven't gotten action. But there's a couple reasons we should do it. One, he shouldn't get away with lying. He shouldn't get away with destroying records. But two, we should check the pardon. Is an auto pen pardon valid? And is a pardon a retrospective pardon back 10 years that doesn't mention a crime? Can you give people a pardon for everything they did in a 10-year period? I can't imagine, and I think the court might narrow that. But it doesn't happen unless the Trump Justice Department will do something. And I've been sending them referrals, and I can't get them to do anything.
Am I going crazy? Can we get going on the popular parts of the Trump agenda, the one that independent and swing voters who came over to the Trump camp were really excited about? Wouldn't that be a better use of our time than trying to destroy Thomas Massie, who has one of the most America First voting records of anyone in Congress? Just a thought. And I summarized the case against Dr. Fauci. I know you love hearing it.
I'm not going to go into it. I won't join you in
People
that
can watch
Dr.
the video
Fauci
we did yesterday.
party today. But I will say, if you look at the last few years, not even last few years, if you look at the last 12 months, you'll see many Republicans who say, this is what the party does. We talk about different issues. We fall in different parts of an issue and we debate publicly and we don't hide away from that. You see at the Turning Points convention, they allow people to get up there and bash one another. And that was really what a lot of people pulled from the convention, that there was a little bit of maybe chaos within the party. You see Marjorie Taylor Greene go on The View, and now Scott Jennings is calling her a Democrat, though. And now you see Massie walking through the halls of Congress, and Laura Loomer's reporter, if you want to call him that, was calling him a Democrat. And so I just trying to understand, is the party the one that fights publicly and that's all okay? Or is it immediately when you disagree with things that fall in line with the America First promise that was proposed by the president before he got the job, are you now a Democrat? Because some of the things actually are not that crazy. Like the fact that Marjorie Taylor Greene and Thomas Massie have in common that they cared about Epstein, when really the reason that most people cared about Epstein is because MAGA and the Republican base and a lot of people within the administration now were propelling that they were going to get to the bottom of this. Yeah. So it's still a Republican issue. I mean, especially if you call it a Democratic hoax because people hopped on later that maybe weren't interested even 2 years ago. So I just don't understand why people are getting labeled as they're changing parties completely when they're maybe trying to reel in a party that doesn't seem to have a very specific direction at the time. And I also am super clear about Democrats and their direction, right? But that's a whole other conversation and segment. And I'm the first one to say that Democrats need to figure out what that looks like immediately. However, Republicans have a lot going on and a lot of different people that don't feel satisfied with the state of the union under the Trump administration. Yeah,
internal debate and discussion is a good thing. It really is. My problem with Laura Loomer is that she selectively says that people who are disagreeing with her within the coalition, they're Democrats. They don't belong in the party. And she's just doing that to people like Massie and Marjorie Taylor Greene. I mean, Marjorie Taylor Greene's differences with Trump are now much broader than Thomas Massie's, which are concentrated on just his areas of ideological disagreement, areas where I would say Republican leadership is more out of step with the base than Thomas Massie is. But like she would never, Josh Hawley, for instance, is, although I've been...
But you call him a rhino, right?
We're going to talk about him in a moment and his vote on, all the war powers situation. But on economics, he votes against the Republican Party constantly. On policy, he votes with Democrats. He votes with Elizabeth Warren on antitrust and banking regulation and all those kinds of things. But Laura Loomer is out doing 10 posts a day about how he's really a Democrat or something. So it's silly. It's selective. It's people who don't, and she wants to invade, she wants to go, crazy in the Middle East in terms of intervention, which is not popular among the Republican base. So what if we were out here saying, you're really a Democrat, you should join the Democratic Party? It's so silly.
Well, you know what's so interesting? Laura Loomer should start adding Donald Trump on social media because, one, it was reported in the New York Post that he speaks to Mamdani, and Mamdani has his direct number and talks to him often, and they have a pretty chummy relationship. But Eric Adams didn't even have...
Well, they have a very similar economic policy.
Eric Adams didn't even have Trump's number. He had to go through the liaison to get in touch with Trump. So they might be friends now. It's good to say that. He also called Elizabeth Warren. We reported that yesterday, and you were very upset. And so if you are calling Josh Hawley a rhino, like some people do, or a lot of people do, well, then Trump himself is a rhino. He's literally cozying up to people whose policies the entire MAGA base is supposed to despise endlessly. But he's calling Elizabeth Warren. He's capping credit cards. He's doing all these things that
I would use her phone
Elizabeth
real
Warren
quick
style policies.
So
shouldn't Laura Loomer direct her anger at the head in charge?
Yeah, but you can't do that and get anywhere. If you lash out at Trump, you're done. You're donezo.
Well, so much for freedom of speech.
So much for the tolerant left. Up next, more protests in Minneapolis after a man was shot in the leg by an ICE officer. And now President Trump is threatening to invoke the Insurrection Act. We'll be right back.
Another incident in Minneapolis last night as officials say a federal officer shot a man in the leg, leading to both of them being hospitalized.
The Department of Homeland Security said the officer was conducting a targeted traffic stop of a man accused of being in the country illegally. DHS laid out the timeline of events on X, writing, in an attempt to evade arrest, the subject fled the scene in his vehicle and crashed into a parked car. The subject then fled on foot. The law enforcement officer caught up to the subject on foot and attempted to apprehend him when the subject began to resist and violently assaulted the officer. While the subject and law enforcement were in a struggle on the ground, two subjects came out of a nearby apartment and also attacked the law enforcement officer with a snow shovel and a broom handle. As the officer was being ambushed and attacked by the two individuals, the original subject got loose and began striking the officer with a shovel or a broomstick. Fearing for his life and safety as he was being ambushed by three individuals, the officer fired a defensive shot to defend his life. The initial subject was hit in the leg.
Just this morning, President Trump threatened to invoke the Insurrection Act if the unrest in Minneapolis continues. This law, which would allow him to deploy military forces to the area, has not been invoked since the Los Angeles riots of 1992. He wrote on Truth Social, quote, "If the corrupt politicians of Minnesota don't obey the law and stop the professional agitators and insurrectionists from attacking the patriots of ICE, who are only trying to do their job, I will institute the Insurrection Act, which many presidents have done before me, and quickly put an end to the travesty that is taking place in this once great state." Tensions remain high throughout the city in the wake of the shooting. The New York Times reports that there were at least 200 protesters gathered near the scene on Wednesday night. The city of Minneapolis confirmed the incident and said that the man who was shot in the leg has non-life-threatening injuries. The city's official X account says, quote, "We understand there is anger. We ask the public to remain calm. The city of Minneapolis again demands that ICE leave the city and state immediately. We stand by our immigrant and refugee communities. Know that you have our full support."
Meanwhile, new developments in last week's fatal shooting of Renee Nicole Good. CBS posted the story on Wednesday morning on X, writing, "The ICE agent who fatally shot Renee Good on January 7th in Minneapolis, Jonathan Ross, did suffer internal bleeding to the torso following the incident, according to two U.S. officials briefed on his medical condition. It's unclear the extent of his bleeding, but officials at the time did say he was released from the hospital that same day of the shooting.
However, not everyone was convinced that the claims of Ross being injured were truthful, and some took issue with CBS for reporting on the story. The network has been in hot water with those on the left since Barry Weiss stepped in as its new editor-in-chief. Writer and reporter Laura Bassett writing, quote, "The government is now lying through CBS because lying straight from the podium wasn't working."
Former
Congressman Justin Amash says, quote, "After gaslighting everyone about the incident, seeing the bad polling, and discovering they'd failed, the administration's next genius move was to leak a nondescript injury 1 week after the fact, possibly as mild as a bruise, and then get all of online MAGA to post, 'See?'"
I like Justin Amash, but I don't know. I can't tell. You're right. It could be the case that this is an internal bleeding. This is overblown, and he was not particularly injured. It could be the case that it was more serious than that. And you can get very injured by being hit by a car, even at a relatively slow speed. So I don't know what. I don't know. I can't tell from the video footage whether it was reasonable for him to think the car was coming at him and that getting out of the way was not really an option, even if it was an option. I don't know. And people just weighing in, oh yeah, he should have just taken the brunt of a car to the chest. That can really hurt you.
Well, I think naturally people...
You can get knocked over, hit your head, and,
Yeah, I think naturally people are going to question what's coming from DHS and from the president, and particularly if anybody else would have reported. I think because CBS has been under this microscope in the last 2 weeks, just because of how it's changed and what the bigger company that owns CBS has at stake if they cozy up to the administration. People are critical of the news network. But I think if the officer got hurt, obviously that's not a great thing, and we want to make sure that he's okay. But there's no incident or part of this conversation where I said ever, or people on the left or right should be saying that they want to see either of the people hurt.
Yeah,
I think the goal was...
I'm just saying it to people who automatically just...
No, but I think the goal was for nobody to get hurt, right? The goal was for nobody to get hurt. So if we look at Minneapolis right now, to me, when I'm watching this video and these pictures, I'm like, this looks like a war zone. Like, what's happening? Like, even watching some of these images, I'm like, these people 2 weeks ago had a neighborhood where, probably everyday average neighborhood going on. And now they have even more, hundreds more ICE officers in their town. And this is just not effective policy. If we look at the fact that the president said he wanted to tackle immigration, many people on his team even more aggressive than he does, but the strategies and the way that people have reacted to it, from going into factories or pulling people out of their car, or even pulling people...
They're not going to do it at all.
But even pulling people out of their cars when they're dropping their children off. It's like there's a better way to handle immigration. And it's not only me saying that.
But the better way is for the cops to coordinate with federal immigration policy in blue cities and blue states, and they refuse to do that.
Well, you know how the
alternative.
president sat down with Mamdani and had an amicable conversation? Mamdani was the one that suggested and asked for the meeting. President Trump thankfully said yes, and they have what seems to be an amicable relationship. Maybe President Trump can be the one to step up to the plate with some of these mayors and governors and say, I'm going to come sit down with you and try to work out these differences, not on Truth Social. What we've seen a lot of is a lot of... We've seen a lot of arguing on social media. I'm saying somebody has to be the adult in the room.
He is subservient to the migrant community who he relies on for political support, which is why both him and Tim Walz didn't want to go, so when they discovered the fraud, wanted to cover it up because they didn't want to be scrutinizing this community because it was going to harm them politically. So they have no interest in doing any kind of law enforcement action for fraud or immigration. They've already demonstrated that. So that's why ICE is being brought in. Now, you don't have to like the way it looks, but that's the reality of what's caused the situation. I'm hearing not a lot of people defending, right? I hope the ambush, attack, brutal beating of this officer,
crazy.
He was absolutely justified from that account, from firing a shot at that person.
And he shot, I noticed that he shot the person in the leg, which is not, I read through the police policy after you talked about it. It's not recommended, but at least we don't have another dead person that we're talking about now. Even though they were attacking them, that would be probably more justified and we wouldn't have to hatch through it as much.
Certainly.
But still, we have somebody that's injured and can get arrested if they need to be arrested because now they're a criminal.
Well, right. I don't want people just dead for the sake of dead. It's, yes.
Right. You don't want
glad he stopped
excessive
being
force.
A threat in
He
that
still was
way.
also being attacked, so maybe there was an excessive force there. But as we learn of more of these stories, nobody wants this to be the outcome where more people are getting shot in the leg, head, anywhere. But at the very least, we don't want
fled from the
people
police, and the police officer followed him, did not fire on him, followed him.
Right, which is part of the protocol that I had read out the other day. Important.
Encountered him and was attacked, and that kind of behavior. And then who are these people
that jumped
came
in?
Out? Are these bystanders who wanted to interfere with a law enforcement operation? What were they doing? Like,
seems like it needs to be looked into. But I think no matter a lot of the conversation that
if
we're
you
having.
see law enforcement trying to detain someone, that you should hamper law enforcement. That is a bad way of thinking in your life. That is dangerous for you. It's dangerous for law enforcement. It's wrong. It's legally wrong. It's morally wrong. It's wrong. Don't do it.
Well, when something goes wrong and we're looking back and we're saying, who can we point the finger? Who started this? That gets us nowhere. And so I think the conversation is like,
illegal immigrant who ran away.
Okay, we could say, okay, well, President Trump started this because he has this aggressive immigration policy. Well, Mayor Fry and Governor Walz started this because they didn't cooperate. Like, who cares about that? We need to have adults having conversations, people that got elected in office by Americans that don't want to see these outcomes. And so somebody has to be an adult is what I'm saying basically flat out. I don't care which side it is, but they need to have a dialogue about how to achieve the reform that people were actually looking for in this country and how to not get people shot and killed and officers hurt in the meantime.
And I think that there's illegally and then committed crimes, violent crimes or financial crimes or.
But wouldn't you prefer an officer not be hit with a?
Started it.
Wouldn't you prefer an officer not be hit with a broom or a bat or whatever? Like,
of course.
Exactly. So let's figure out a better way to get people that are criminals.
But not by not having law enforcement. We need to have law enforcement.
For sure. That's why they need to have a conversation to start to figure out how they're going to implement.
Laws should be enforced.
I don't think ICE just all over the place is the way forward.
All right.
The Senate voted down a war powers resolution yesterday, ending the bipartisan push to limit Trump's actions in Venezuela. Don't go anywhere. Trump's grip on the Republican Party may be tighter than some would like to think.
Yesterday, the Senate narrowly defeated a war powers resolution that would have limited the president's ability to make additional attacks on Venezuela after two Republican senators, Josh Hawley and Todd Young, they flipped at the last minute to bring the vote to a tie. Vice President Vance then cast the tie-breaking vote, which ultimately dismissed the resolution. It was unlikely to become law anyway because it would either need to be signed by the president or Congress would need to override his veto, neither of which were at all likely to happen. It does, however, show the growing unease with the president's aggressive foreign policy in Venezuela, as well as the threats of military action in Greenland and Iran.
Now, it comes as the U.S. has seized yet another Venezuela-linked tanker just today, ahead of a meeting between President Trump and Venezuelan opposition leader Maria Machado. It's the sixth time the U.S. has detained a vessel that is or has carried Venezuelan oil. Senator Hawley, one of the two senators that hopped the fence last minute, said he did so because he received assurances that American boots will not hit the ground in Venezuela. Let's take a listen.
For me, this has always been about ground troops, ground troops into Venezuela, occupying Venezuela. That's not something that I think I would want to do. And listen, I talked to the president, I talked to the Secretary of State, I talked to the Department of Justice. I thank the administration for all of their outreach. And what the Secretary of State said to me very clearly is, we're not doing that. We don't have ground troops in Venezuela. This is not another Iraq. We're not going to occupy Venezuela. And you know what? That's good enough for me.
Well, I'm glad he got those assurances. That is important. However, I would have liked him to hold out, I guess. I think it would be better to have Congress be the ones making these decisions. That is the role prescribed for them by our Constitution. The previous War Powers, the War Powers Act that is in force requires notification of Congress, and then there has to be a vote within 60 days. And the administration has no interest in following that. So I was happy to see Hawley standing up for principles. Josh Hawley is not a Republican I often have very many good things to say about because I really dislike his domestic policies, his economic policies. But on foreign policy, this was something I was glad to see him make a stand for. Of course, it wouldn't have mattered because Trump would have vetoed it had it passed. But no ground troops is a positive, but, we'll see if they keep their word on that.
We know that there was a lot of pressure and aggressive pushback from the president himself, who was very public about this. So we understand that people maybe made a choice based on that. I know he said he spoke to Rubio and he said the president, but I know the conversation with Rubio where he was assured that no boots would be on the ground. But this was really simple. It's like if you want to keep using military force or military actions in or around Venezuela, go through Congress. Mm-hmm. And I know that the president and Marco Rubio assured you that it won't happen, but why not have it on paper? It's like if you take a new job, sign a contract. It's not that I don't trust that you're going to pay me. It's that this is the agreement. And, it was sent to prevent future attacks, the same ones that Democrats and Republicans complained about without having enough information or detail. This will give you all the information and detail needed for any time we decide to blow up another boat in the Caribbean. And then there's a complaining mother who's from Trinidad that I love to bring up, like you talk about, who says that her innocent son was killed. We won't know. Congress will know that they made a call on these decisions and that there's no chance for them, because they were thoroughly explaining the mission, what was happening, or if innocent people died, they would feel clear and confident on that. And like you said, people don't think Congress does a great job in the first place as it stands. And so this is your job. This is your job. And the fact that you don't want that on pen and paper so that the people that you represent can be affirmed in what we're doing.
Yeah, their job is
kind of silly.
Voting down efforts to constrain the president even slightly. That's too much for them. It's really sad.
Right. That's why we have 3 branches of government. That's supposed to be the whole point.
Now we have 2. We have the Congress and the executive are merged into one branch. And we have the Supreme Court.
And Marjorie Taylor Greene talked about that. Marjorie Taylor Greene said, Congress is not really, they're just Trump puppets. Up next, the White House is facing major backlash amid Federal Reserve independence fears. I will talk about that in my lens. Stick around. I know.
All right, Lindsey, what's in your lens today?
Yeah, so the White House is facing a new cascade of criticism, with regional Fed officials now pushing back on the criminal inquiry into Fed Chair Jerome Powell. The Federal Reserve is supposed to operate independently, insulated from political pressure, so it can make tough, often unpopular decisions to keep inflation in check. That independence is now being tested in a really public way. Chicago Fed President Austin Goolsbee didn't mince words when he told NPR yesterday, quote, "I consider Chair Powell to be a first ballot Hall of Fame Fed chair. If we're going to get into a circumstance where the independence or even the integrity of Chair Powell is in question, we're in a bad spot." That's not partisan rhetoric. That's an economic warning. This comes as the Justice Department investigates Powell's congressional testimony related to the Fed's costly headquarters renovation, a probe many economists, CEOs, and even Republican lawmakers see as political pressure disguised as oversight. Now, Minneapolis Fed President Neel Kashkari has said the escalation of the attacks is really about monetary policy, not construction costs. And New York Fed President John Williams emphasized that Powell is a, quote, man of impeccable integrity, warning that interference could lead to higher inflation. Now, at the same time, President Trump is openly frustrated that interest rates are not being cut fast enough. Instead of waiting on the Fed, he's trying to find ways around it. In recent days, Trump ordered Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac to buy $200 billion in mortgage-backed securities, a move designed to push mortgage rates down. Axios reports it worked, at least temporarily, sending rates below 6% for the first time since 2023. He's also calling for a one-year cap on credit card interest rates at 10%, though it's unclear whether banks would comply without official legislation. Now, on the surface, cheaper borrowing sounds really great. Who wouldn't want lower mortgage payments or less credit card interest? But economics is rarely that simple. Artificially lowering rates without addressing supply, especially in housing, can backfire. We've seen this before. In 2021, low rates helped fuel bidding wars. I was part of one of them. Drove home prices higher and higher and left affordability worse, not better. What we're watching right now is a tug-of-war between short-term political wins to help Republicans in the midterms and long-term economic stability. Undercutting the Fed may feel like relief in the moment, but history shows it can lead to higher inflation, market instability, and deeper pain for us all down the road. Bottom line, when leaders start pressuring the referee instead of respecting the rules of the game, the entire system gets riskier, and everyday Americans are usually the ones that pay the price.
Incredible. I agree completely.
Incredible? Oh,
no, I have not a single word of criticism.
I
totally agree.
I think this is significant.
Low interest rates cause boom and bust cycles. That's part of Austrian economics. The manipulation, devaluation of our currency is all downstream of that. The government encouraging reckless borrowing is the cause of great economic instability, great panics in the market that have arisen historically. That's absolutely true. And if for political reasons they lower interest rates to appease the president, there's going to be no end to that. Future Democrats could do the same thing. That's bad. We do not want that.
And if we just look at the wave from 2021, it seemed like if you were lucky enough to be working and not, gravely or deeply affected by the pandemic, there were a lot of people that had the money at the time to try to buy properties, and there were low interest rates. I mean, ours was like in the 2-3%, which is unseen. I mean, I talk to people that are 80 years old that are like, that's crazy. My whole lifetime, I haven't seen that. But when you see that bubble and the pricing that I was talking about burst, now we're in a situation 5 years later where people have felt like the economy has been absolute garbage for the last 3 years or more. And I think if we play with that too much and we go into the midterms and people feel like there's some relief that the president has promised, then they have 3 years past that when there's a new president and another failing economy. I think people want to look for long-term stability in our economy and figure that out. And when you have the Fed chairs that are, like you said, nothing might be independent in your eyes fully, but they've always operated in a space where if they made an uncomfortable decision, they didn't feel like they were going to be berated or lose their job at any point. They just had to make the call. They were autonomous. So even if they had a political affiliation or more of a friend on one side, they still made autonomous decisions based on numbers and the economy. And I think when you see all these different Fed leaders that are from all over the country speaking out in unison, putting out a public statement, every single living Fed chair that's had Jerome Powell's job signed a statement and put it out to say this is wrong. And I'm sure they served and have different political affiliations. I think the president has to wake up and say, what policies can I look at outside of harassing the Fed and outside of policies that most of my party doesn't agree with to try to make it more affordable in the U.S. And maybe the first place to start, and I know I can just tee you up for this one, is the tariffs. Maybe that could be the first place to start, because I think that there are other things that he can be looking at, or just not pay so much attention to every other thing on his list to do, like pursuing Dr. Fauci. It's time to really focus on, and I know he's not doing that,
now
but you
you're
want him
looking
to.
for a fight.
No, he wants to. I'm saying
Dr. Fauci.
He shouldn't do that. And people are tweeting me. I told you I'm never on Twitter. I don't.
Economy.
No, it wouldn't. No, it wouldn't. He should not waste the time.
Well, because the economy was great until COVID destroyed it.
And that was Dr. Fauci's fault.
It was created in a lab by
I wanted to make sure I
science
heard
and
you
research
correctly.
funded by Dr. Fauci. So that's why it's important that we don't do that again. But
So him being in jail will fix the economy mostly for us?
we'll send a message to future Dr. Frankensteins not to do this reckless experimentation on live viruses that kills millions of people. I think that's important, but that's just me. Having a good economy is not rocket science. It's very easy. First of all, lower taxes, get rid of every regulation you possibly can, don't do tariffs at all, and cut government spending, fire government employees. Get rid of red tape so we can have as much housing as possible. We want to make it as easy to start a business and employ people, even if they're immigrants. You've got to have policies for high-skilled immigrants to come in. Do all of that, the economy will hum and buzz like a beautiful mechanical butterfly. I don't know. Bull. I was like doing a bee, like a bumblebee.
Okay, I think you sound like Elon Musk.
Am I high today?
I hope not. You sound like Elon Musk, who had all these pipe dreams about what he could do if he comes in with a businessman mindset for our government structure and our economy. And as you saw, and we all saw, he's still a great businessman, but he left the government with his tail tucked a bit. A lot of people that he fired got rehired. A lot of the billions that he mentioned to cut, people have refuted those claims in a variety of ways, saying it's like a fraction of what he actually says he cut. So the ideas are very pie in the sky, but like, what's the realistic way? You're like, just get rid of this, fire all government employees. Okay, well, Elon Musk tried that. It was a fail. So what else then? It's not like
Sauron or Voldemort. You think it's dead, but it exists still in its spectral, smoky form and can never properly be totally destroyed. It resurfaces government employment.
And so you just think we should have nothing, just Supreme Court and the president and call it a, because you already hate Congress. Now you hate...
Fire a lot of government employees.
Have like 5 people
and a lot
left.
of benefits, privatize Social Security, cut Medicare, Medicaid. We got to do all that.
Okay, our system is going to run ragged with no type of health coverage. Everyone's still going to go. I mean, well, there's people that still have no money that are going to go to the hospital still, and who's paying for all that stuff?
People with no money, we need a little
out
bit
of
of
jobs
state for them, but people with tons of money, maybe they can pay for it themselves, is what I would say. Next up, a Washington Post reporter had her home searched by the FBI on Wednesday as part of a classified information probe. Stay with us to discuss. FBI agents searched the home of Washington Post reporter Hannah Nathanson on Wednesday, according to the Justice Department. It's part of an investigation into classified information that was allegedly leaked by a Pentagon contractor.
A report from the Post says, quote, the reporter Hannah Nathanson was at her home in Virginia. At the time of the search, federal agents searched her home and her devices, seizing her phone, 2 laptops, and a Garmin watch. One of the laptops was her personal computer. The other was a Post-issued laptop.
Investigators assured Nathanson that she is not the focus of this investigation, has not been accused of any wrongdoing. The warrant states that the man being investigated is Aurelio Perez Lugones, a system administrator with top-secret security clearance who was arrested last week. He's charged with unlawfully retaining national defense information. Attorney General Pam Bondi wrote on X that the Trump administration will not tolerate illegal leaks of classified information that, when reported, poses a grave risk to our nation's national security and the brave men and women who are serving our country.
Now, the Washington Post executive editor, Matt Murray, called the search of Nathanson's home, quote, deeply concerning, and said it, quote, raises profound questions and concern around the constitutional protections of our work. Others echoed his concerns online. Liberal commentator Ed Krasenstein replied to Bondi's post, writing, quote, imagine if Joe Biden did this. You guys would say that he should be impeached for violating the First Amendment. And journalist Glenn Greenwald says, quote, a huge controversy of the Obama DOJ was when it obtained the phone records of Fox's James Rosen, then 2 AP reporters, to find out who was leaking classified docs. The Trump FBI just searched the home of a Washington Post reporter with the same motive. Look, classified documents cases are not new, but I think raiding a reporter's home that wasn't even accused of wrongdoing is something that's new. And
what about raiding a president's home?
Yeah, and the DOJ declined to continue to prosecute that. So why would they move forward with this?
Lago.
Yes, I understand that. I get it. But I don't think anybody in the DOJ right now would say this is a good move to continue to move forward with the Mar-a-Lago investigation. So specifically, there's an overall attack.
Must be brought back to the government.
There is an overall attack on the press that makes this extremely concerning. I think that when you're suing newsrooms like CBS, when you're suing the Wall Street Journal, when you're suing the New York Times, but this is happening at the same time that homes are being raided because you want to know who's leaking material. When reporters, even Fox reporters, declined to sign some weird arbitrary agreement with the Pentagon.
That was
everybody condemned that.
Putting a bunch of things together, some of which I also.
This is still about a Pentagon leak, so they're saying, well, we're shutting it out. You cannot report in any capacity we don't like. If you have done it, we're going to harass you to find who the leak inside the Pentagon was. I mean, this is like freedom of the press, freedom of speech. I don't understand. Like, this affects anybody who wants to be a whistleblower, which has given us major news stories in the past. Somebody who's willing and brave enough to ring the alarm for us to look at. This will stop some government accountability, because now people think they're going to go to jail if they point out a wrongdoing of our government. I mean, this is trying to get rid of anybody that might be brave enough to say something's going wrong here.
Well, they're not pursuing charges against her. I would agree that it would be wrong to go after the journalists are going to report classified information if they get it, if they think it's in the public interest, and they should continue to do that. And that's not illegal. What the government can do is to go after the leakers. So if they're not going after her, they're going after who they think leaked her.
Well, tell me, if your home got raided, would you be like, oh, they're not coming after me?
Carrying classified information, smuggling out in his lunchbox?
Do you think if your home got raided as Robby Soave, would you be comfortable with that because the government was looking for someone that you talked to? I think that is a complete violation of this Washington Post report. Nobody wants that to happen. That's what I'm saying. Like, they're using national security as a catch-all. Like, everything is detrimental. They said people had to get out of the Pentagon or sign this agreement because it was a national security concern. I feel like that statement is being overused and abused just to benefit the Trump administration in whatever way they see fit. And that's not really the appropriate way to lead and govern.
Right. I'm just saying it's part of their attempt to make their case against this guy who they're going to bring charges against, who is a leaker, who is a federal employee, and who can be prosecuted or punished or sanctioned in some way for what he did. They're not trying to do that to the reporter.
So the concerns coming from her executive editor that are saying it's concerning that Washington Post
I would say it's
documents the laptop was taken, her laptop, her Garmin device. I mean, I think that's like a bit much for a reporter, because now at this point, anybody who gets any leak and shares information should be concerned with their home being raided. Right. And so that is a natural. Nobody. I mean, think about somebody's life.
Gather information.
Exactly. Like, we live pretty normal lives. If somebody comes busting down our door, you know what a raid looks like? I mean, that is absurd to get, or even knocking in the middle of the night, early in the morning. Like, these are all concerning when we were just doing our job.
I would favor changing policies to make it more difficult for them to obtain warrants to do these kinds of searches. Warrants are granted, in my view, to the government far too easily, especially including for the special FISA courts that grant warrants to do the surveillance of phone records and those kinds of things, wiretapping, those
yes.
issues. It's just granted at the government's discretion every single time, even when their theory of wrongdoing is ludicrous. And that is a policy that keeps getting re-upped on a bipartisan basis, is voted for when it needs to be reauthorized. And I have long opposed that. And I'm frustrated that more Republicans do not.
I just think if reporters develop hundreds of sources over years of working in this industry, like this reporter has, to be concerned that any time the government doesn't like your reporting, you may or may not get raided. It's a bigger issue because...
But it's more than not liking the reporting here. It's classified documents.
Yes, I understand that. But then go after the person that leaked the classified documents, which they said they are. But reporters are going to feel naturally affected by this, right? You would be not... If she's within her right mind to feel unease about continuing to move forward and report stories where something that the administration has pushed back against, which is reporting any information that we have not leaked. We're not talking about sealed cases. We're talking about stuff that people have leaked in the past and have gotten to the press to share big stories. To think about putting that out and releasing it, or even accepting the information from the source, because by default, you can be a casualty of this attack against whoever leaked the document. Your home can get raided. Your everyday life can be completely jarred because you're doing your job. And I think that it should be alarming. And whether it's like changing the laws that we know, like FISA laws, that's like a whole entire rabbit hole that won't get changed. But pointing out in the moment that an administration should not be even pursuing looking into this girl's home and taking away her work materials because she's protected to report on the things that she reports on, I think that's an accurate and balanced way to say, yes, you're welcome to pursue anybody who's leaking information inside of the Pentagon. But when you step outside of that and start attacking journalists, that's a whole other story. And she should feel attacked. When your home is raided, no matter if they're bringing you out in cuffs or not, I think naturally people will feel attacked.
All right.
Up next, donations poured in for a suspended Ford worker in Michigan who reportedly heckled President Trump. We'll be right back after this.
A Michigan auto worker was caught on video heckling President Trump as a pedophile protector when the president visited a Dearborn factory in Michigan on Tuesday. The video shows Trump touring Ford's Dearborn truck plant where the incident took place.
The clip that has now gone viral shows Trump responding to the worker by appearing to mouth an expletive and displaying a middle finger as he walked away.
The worker, who has now been suspended by Ford Motor, has 2 GoFundMe pages that raised around $800,000, $765 to be exact, as of Wednesday evening. The GoFundMe spokesperson confirmed the 2 pages as legitimate fundraisers.
Now, the worker, identified as TJ Sabula, wrote on one of the pages Wednesday, quote, "We greatly appreciate the outpouring of support. At this time, we are closing donations to this campaign and encourage you to look for other causes and organizations to support."
White House spokesman Stephen Chung told Reuters a lunatic was wildly screaming expletives in a complete fit of rage, and the president gave an appropriate and unambiguous response.
Meanwhile, the United Auto Workers defended Sabula, putting a statement on X, quote, "The auto worker at the Dearborn truck plant is a proud member of a strong and fighting union, the UAW. He believes in freedom of speech, a principle we wholeheartedly embrace, and we stand with our membership in protecting their voice on the job."
Well,
freedom of speech ain't always pretty. You argue this all the time. He said what he was free to say. He didn't threaten the man with violence. He didn't do anything, but he's suspended now. Now, I'm sure, I'm going to go with my hunch and say his salary was not $810,000, $765,000 a year. So he probably had his most lucrative year in a long time.
And good for him. If people want to give him money, that's fine. Freedom of speech, you don't have freedom of speech in the context of your employment.
Right. It's a private.
So it's not.
Yeah.
So freedom of speech is not the issue here. Your employer can fire you for doing something embarrassing at work, including heckling the president. Do I think that's a good thing to do? No, but it doesn't impugn freedom of speech. I saw a lot of people being like, Elon Musk and Barry Weiss love freedom of speech. Why aren't they coming to this guy's defense? It's just not. That's not freedom of speech. You don't have a freedom of speech right to say whatever you want and keep your job. The freedom of speech keeps you from being arrested for saying something. If he was arrested for insulting Trump, then yes, that would be a major freedom of speech issue. But it's just in the workplace.
Every president in recent history has been heckled. Obama, Bush, we know this, right? President Trump is the only one I've seen in recent history give somebody the finger, like a middle school person.
Do you have some pearls for me to clutch?
I'm not clutching my pearls, I'm just telling you. He's the only one who can't seem to figure out how to respond to the people that want answers regarding Epstein.
He figured out how to respond.
Yeah, he just said he stuck his finger up. I'm just saying, like, people are asking for real answers. You see how you pointed out in your radar earlier how Thomas Massie responds to someone that I would consider, you called a reporter, I would call a heckler, right? He was just bothering Thomas Massie, trying to get a rise out of him. Well, he got a rise, and he got a thorough response, and in your perspective, got shut down. And in Laura Loomer's perspective, that was satisfactory, but a lot of people disagreed with her. And so therefore, President Trump has to be a little bit more savvy as somebody who spent decades of his time on television and the public eye, sticking the middle finger up at the person who's saying something to you. I mean, I'm sure people said bad things to the president all the time, and he said bad things to people. That just happens on social media probably once a day.
I don't care how he responds.
Sticking the finger at him and the man getting fired. It's like,
at him.
Okay, but the same president, it's not like we're dealing with...
Let's not pretend that this is some thoughtful, principled critique.
We're not dealing with the president with the top-tier decorum of our time. So somebody behaving the way that the president...
I need the pearls.
The way the president behaves, somebody at work doing that matches his behavior.
Heavens to Betsy.
It matches his behavior.
Trump is a little crude with his language.
At a private company, you can get fired. It's up to them. But when you are protected by a union, it's a little bit harder to fire people. And all they're saying is that he has freedom
aware
of speech.
Of that.
And so I'm going to see how this whole thing plays out. But it's a little bit harder to fire people, just like we saw recently at the college that had to reinstate the professor because they fired him over comments that he made about Charlie Kirk. I mean, it's a little hard to fire people when they are protected, have tenure, have a union around them.
Well, a college is a little different because if as a condition of your employment, they promise, as they often do at a college, that students and faculty enjoy First Amendment rights, enjoy free speech rights akin to the First Amendment, if they promise you that and you are hired there or you enroll there and then they violate your freedom of speech, I would say they're violating a contract they made with you, and contracts should be enforced. If, as an employee of of Ford, they say it says in your terms of employment that you can express your views on political subjects or whatever while on the job, whatever it is. And then they violate that and punish you. Then that is a contractual issue that a union is there to represent you and make sure that doesn't happen. So it's fine. But a lot of people have at-will employment. I mean, if you and I start mouthing off about the Nexstar Corporation, they'll probably ask us not to do that, and that's fine.
Time out. If Nexstar had us attend, which might be, I don't know how mandatory it was, so I don't want to get in the weeds on this, but a town hall where Trump was the keynote speaker, I actually have the option to skip that or attend because I'm interested. And if I wouldn't heckle him. I'm just saying this is something where the president's coming to Detroit. He's saying things like inflation is done. A lot of what they think he's saying might be nonsense.
Our job is literally to express opinions, so it would be weird.
Yes, it's a little bit for us. I would show up and I would experience the whole thing. I'm asking, does that employee have to be suggested to the president coming and schmoozing and waving and saying inflation's done at his workplace? Is that part of his job? Because you're seeing a crowd of people that basically had to like watch the president. And you know how corporations work. Like somebody important's coming, everybody get dressed up and everybody act like their best behavior. And so some people might not just want to fall in line like that. And so he's expressing himself freely. And
I wouldn't.
We'll see what happens next.
The firing decision maker, I would not.
You wouldn't fire him?
No. But I'm just saying he has no right to not be fired necessarily unless it specifically says in whatever contractual arrangement he has that he can express his views. And he got an $800,000 payday. Good of him to say that, you know what, that's plenty of money. Thank you. Please donate to some other cause.
He was about to hit $1 million.
I respect that, saying, wow, you know, they're kids with cancer or something, or
something else to do.
Browse elsewhere in the GoFundMe category. Yeah. So I don't know. That's from my hometown. You know.
Yeah. So did you feel happy about that? The president sticking up his middle finger to the people of your hometown?
I don't care. It was not to the people of my hometown. It was to one guy.
To the auto workers of your hometown.
All right. They're telling us we got to go. That does it for us today on Rising Live. Look out for more exclusive YouTube content coming your way later today. And be sure to like, share, and subscribe to the Hill's YouTube channel so that you never miss any content. And for those of you who like to listen while on the go, we're now available anywhere you listen to podcasts. And we'll see you later. Bye-bye.